Have you ever seen someone smile at a funeral? Not the small, polite smile, not a nervous one. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes. A smile that barely shows on the lips, but somehow says that a weight has been lifted, that something has ended. It was the morning of October 11th, in Maplewood Heights, at a small church. The air inside was quiet, almost heavy. The wooden casket was at the front, polished and perfect. White lilies lay neatly on top. Even the flowers seemed arranged to hide the grief. And standing right beside the casket was Elena Harper. She wore black. Her hair was tied tightly. Her makeup was minimal. Her eyes had just a hint of shadow underneath, but no tears. Inside the casket lay Daniel Harper, 42 years old, a financial consultant, a volunteer in the community, the kind of man everyone called perfect. At least, that's what the world saw. People came forward one by one, offering condolences. "I'm so sorry for your loss," they whispered. Some cried. Some just nodded quietly. Elena nodded back the same way for everyone. Calm, controlled, perfectly measured. Then came the moment of the final prayer. The pastor lifted his hands. "Daniel is at peace now," he said. And at that exact moment, Elena's lips curved upward ever so slightly. Just for a half second. So small that many might not notice it at all. But Margaret, sitting a few rows ahead, saw it. She later told the police, she didn't look sad. She looked almost free. 3 days before this funeral, everything had seemed normal. Thursday night, 11:40 p.m., 911 received a call. "My husband fell down the stairs. He's not breathing," Elena said. Her voice was calm, steady, not panicked, not broken. The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Daniel was at the bottom of the stairs. His head had a deep wound. His right arm was twisted at an odd angle. The pool of blood was small, suggesting the fall was fast. There were no signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle. The house was locked. The initial police report said, possible accidental fall. The case was almost closed. Almost. But there was one detail that bothered the officers. Daniel had sent a message to a friend just 3 days before he died. "If something happens to me, don't trust." The message was incomplete. The rest had been deleted. And who was the don't trust? That question haunted everyone who read it. At the funeral, the half-second smile became the first clue that something about this death was far from ordinary. The calmness, the timing, the small expression, it all hinted at a story that no one could yet understand. Because sometimes, a smile can be more revealing than words ever could. 3 days before the funeral, the town of Maplewood Heights was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that hides secrets. Elena Harper walked into her home, the same house she had shared with Daniel for 11 years. Every corner of the house seemed perfect, carefully arranged. But that perfection was like a mask. Behind it, tension had always lived. Daniel had been the charming husband everyone admired. At the office, he was respected. In the neighborhood, he was polite and friendly. But inside their home, things were different. No one outside knew the little arguments that had been happening over the past few months. The small lies, the tension over money, the secrets Daniel kept buried. Elena had noticed him becoming more withdrawn, more anxious. Sometimes he would stare at the ceiling for hours, not speaking. Other times, he would check his phone constantly, deleting messages the moment they came. Elena herself had changed too. She had learned to be careful with her words, to measure every response. She had learned that a wrong word could explode into chaos. And over time, she had become quieter, calmer, almost invisible. That night, Daniel had come home late. His steps were heavy, slow, almost hesitant. Elena was sitting in the living room, reading. She sensed that something was off. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Daniel didn't answer. He walked past her and went to the staircase. Elena followed, noticing the way he held the railing tightly, like he was balancing more than just his body. "Be careful," she said, more to herself than to him. That was the last conversation they had. Moments later, Daniel slipped. One wrong step, one sudden loss of balance, and he fell. Elena ran, but it was too late. She could hear the faint sound of impact. She tried to lift him, to call out to him. She dialed 911, her voice steady, controlled. She knew panic would make it worse. She knew the world was already judging. The investigation began. Officers came in and out. They asked questions Elena had rehearsed answers for. She told them Daniel had been stressed, distracted, maybe careless. They nodded politely, took notes, and left. But deep inside, Elena felt a cold, sharp awareness. Something didn't add up. Not the fall, not the timing, not the way Daniel had looked at her just hours before. She remembered a conversation with Daniel a week ago. "Everything is falling apart," he had said quietly. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I can't fix it. I can't fix anything anymore." Elena didn't ask what he meant. She had learned that sometimes questions only made things worse. Now, standing in the quiet house after his death, Elena understood something chilling. Daniel's death might not have been just an accident. At the funeral, people whispered. Some glanced at her, wondering about the faint smile. No one dared ask, but Elena could feel eyes on her. People always notice little things, even when they pretended not to. Her thoughts wandered back to Chicago, to the life Daniel had left behind. The investments that had failed, the meetings he had missed, the strange phone calls in the middle of the night. She remembered seeing him arguing with men she didn't recognize. Voices raised, papers thrown, doors slammed. She had tried to ignore it, to convince herself it wasn't her business. But now, all those memories came rushing back, and they made her stomach twist. Someone had been watching. Someone had known. And now, the calm exterior of Maplewood Heights was starting to crack. That night, alone in the house, Elena sat in the dark, replaying the moments leading to Daniel's fall. The faint light from the street lamp outside cast long shadows across the walls. She felt the weight of all the things unsaid, all the secrets buried. And then she realized the smile she had shown at the funeral, it wasn't a sign of happiness. It was a shield, a small act of control in a world that had taken everything from her. Because sometimes surviving isn't about feeling. It's about hiding how you really feel until you can figure out the truth. Elena couldn't sleep that night. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. Every creak of the floor, every distant car passing by felt louder than usual. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dark corners, thinking about Daniel's fall. It didn't feel like an accident. Something about the way he had fallen, the way he had moved that night, kept replaying in her mind. She remembered the way his hand had brushed the railing, the hesitation in his step. It wasn't clumsiness. It wasn't fatigue. Something had made him slip. She thought about the phone calls he had received over the past few weeks. Strange numbers that vanished before she could see them. Messages that disappeared before she could read them. People she had never met, but who clearly knew more about Daniel than anyone should. And then there was the incomplete message. The one he had sent to a friend. "If something happens to me, don't trust." Her stomach twisted. Who was he warning? And why had he deleted the rest? Elena knew something dangerous had been lurking in their life for a long time. She had felt it, even if she hadn't wanted to admit it. And now, with Daniel gone, she realized she was standing alone in the middle of it. The next morning, the police returned. Officer Ryan Collins was there again, polite and professional, but Elena noticed a subtle difference in his eyes. He wasn't just investigating. He was searching, observing. Like he already suspected that there was more to Daniel's fall than anyone wanted to admit. He asked her the usual questions. Where was she? What had Daniel been doing? Did anyone know about his recent behavior? Elena answered carefully, measured, hiding everything she could. She wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the full story either. She had learned early that the truth could be dangerous. Sometimes silence was the only protection. After the officers left, Elena went to the study. Daniel's desk was neat, papers stacked in order, but something caught her eye. One folder was slightly out of place. She pulled it out and found documents that made her heart race. Contracts, emails, and a series of financial transactions she didn't understand fully. But one thing was clear. Daniel had been involved in something big, something risky. She remembered the strange men she had seen in their driveway weeks ago. Men she had ignored, thinking they were delivery drivers or maintenance workers. Now, she realized they were watching, waiting, and Daniel had known. He had tried to protect her in his own way, sending that incomplete warning. Elena sat there, shaking, feeling the full weight of what had been hidden from her. Her husband's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a warning, a message, and she had to decide. Would she stay silent like she always had, or would she start asking questions? Because someone knew the truth. Someone was still out there, and the longer she waited, the more dangerous it would become. That evening, she walked through the neighborhood. The sky was gray, clouds hanging low. She noticed cars parked too long in front of houses. Faces she didn't recognize peeking from behind curtains. The city that had seemed calm now felt like a trap. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It had no words, just a photo of Daniel lying at the bottom of the stairs. The same photo the police had seen. And below it, a single line, "We are still watching." Elena's hand trembled as she put the phone down. She realized she was no longer just a widow. She was a target, and someone wanted her to know that they had control, that her safety was an illusion. For the first time, Elena felt fear. Not just sadness, not just grief, but real fear. The kind that sits in your chest and spreads through your limbs. The kind that tells you that every decision from now on could be the difference between life and death. She had lived her life carefully, always hiding her thoughts, always controlling her emotions. But now, silence wasn't protection. Silence was danger. She had to act. But act against whom? Who wanted Daniel gone and why? Elena didn't have answers yet. But she knew one thing. She couldn't wait any longer. Whoever had orchestrated this, whoever had been watching, whoever had forced the warning into Daniel's last message, they were still there. And they weren't going to stop. As night fell, Elena sat by the window, looking at the quiet street. She thought about the life she had shared with Daniel, about the man he had been, and about the secrets he had kept. And she made a decision. She would not be silent anymore. Not completely. Not while the danger was still out there. Because the moment she spoke, even a little, the world would change. And the truth, long hidden, would start moving on its own. Elena didn't sleep that night. Her mind raced with questions, possibilities, and fears she could barely name. She had always believed that Daniel's death was an accident, but now she knew better. Something had been carefully planned, something that had brought him down the stairs, and it wasn't fate. The next morning, Elena returned to Daniel's study. She sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Password-protected files appeared on the screen, each one more disturbing than the last. Financial records showed large sums of money moving to unknown accounts. Emails hinted at deals that were secretive, possibly illegal. Daniel had been involved in something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And then she found the names. Names she didn't recognize. Names linked to powerful men in Chicago. Men who had influence, wealth, and the kind of connections that could ruin lives with a single phone call. Elena realized with a cold certainty that these weren't just business associates. These were enemies. People who had watched Daniel, tracked him, and ultimately decided to remove him. She leaned back in the chair, her mind spinning. The realization hit her. Daniel had been trying to protect her, but he hadn't been able to finish the job. He had left her clues, hidden messages, and warnings, but she had to find them before it was too late. Hours passed as she pieced together emails, receipts, and bank statements. The puzzle slowly took shape. Someone had orchestrated a plan to destroy Daniel, and anyone close to him. Elena knew she had been close enough to be next. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, a short message. Stop digging or pay the price. Elena's hands shook, but she didn't panic. Instead, she felt a strange determination building inside her. She had always been careful, always quiet, always hidden. But she wasn't going to disappear like Daniel. She would uncover the truth, piece by piece, and she would make sure those responsible were exposed. The first step was to find out who had been monitoring Daniel. She remembered the men she had seen outside their house weeks before. Delivery trucks, maintenance workers, strangers in the neighborhood. They weren't random. They were watching, waiting. Elena decided to track them quietly. She drove around the neighborhood, noting license plate numbers, car models, and times they appeared. She kept a notebook hidden under her coat. Every detail mattered. Every observation could be a clue. Then, Late that evening, she found something that made her heart race. A man in a dark suit was standing near the park across from her street. He wasn't moving much, just observing. Elena stayed in her car, pretending to look at her phone. She waited, watching him. After 20 minutes, he left, but she memorized his car and his mannerisms. It was clear now, someone powerful had a network. Someone had planned Daniel's death carefully, and someone wanted Elena to know they were still in control. She realized the danger wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Fear was their weapon. Silence was their tool. And she had been trained, in a way, to obey without questioning. But Elena was no longer willing to be silent. She decided that the next step was to confront the financial records. She needed a plan, and for that, she needed allies. She couldn't trust the police entirely. They were polite, professional, but too easily intimidated by power. Elena reached out to a former friend of Daniel's, someone he had trusted implicitly. She sent a discreet message, asking to meet in person, away from prying eyes. The meeting was arranged for the next morning at a small, quiet cafe in a neighboring town. Elena arrived early, watching every face that walked in. When the friend arrived, they exchanged a few careful words before sitting down. "Elena, are you sure about this?" the friend asked, glancing around nervously. "I have no choice," Elena said. "Daniel was killed. I know it was an accident. And now, I have to find out who did it before they come for me." Her friend nodded slowly. "There are names you need to know. But some of these people, they're untouchable. They control lawyers, police, everything." Elena listened, her resolve hardening. She had always survived by being careful, by measuring every move. But now, she knew that careful wasn't enough. She needed courage, and she needed strategy. As she left the cafe, Elena felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. But there was something else too, a spark of determination. For the first time in months, she wasn't just reacting. She was planning. And she knew that every step she took from now on would be dangerous. Every decision could bring her closer to the truth, or closer to the same fate that had claimed Daniel. But Elena had learned one lesson that no one could take away. If the truth was going to survive, she had to act. Because someone had taken Daniel from her. And now, it was her turn to take control. Elena knew the final step was the most dangerous. Every move she made could alert the people who had killed Daniel. Every person she trusted could turn into a threat. But she had come too far to stop now. With the information from Daniel's files and her friend's guidance, Elena tracked the network. The names she uncovered were powerful. People with influence in business, law enforcement, and politics. They had orchestrated everything, ensuring Daniel's death looked like an accident. Elena realized she couldn't confront them directly. Not yet. She had to expose them strategically, using their own tools against them. She started by collecting every piece of evidence: emails, bank transfers, witness statements, and photographs. She duplicated everything and stored backups in multiple secure locations. One evening, she arranged a meeting with a journalist she trusted. The journalist was experienced, fearless, and had a reputation for uncovering corruption that others ignored. "Elena, are you sure about this?" the journalist asked. "I have no choice," Elena replied. "Daniel was taken from me, and they will keep doing this if someone doesn't stop them. I want the truth out, no matter the cost." The journalist nodded. "We'll make sure the evidence is airtight. Once we publish, there's no going back." Elena handed over the documents. As they went through them, the magnitude of what she had uncovered became clear. These weren't just small-time criminals. They were untouchable in their city. Yet with proof, even the powerful can fall. The next morning, the story broke. Headlines screamed across newspapers and websites. Hidden network exposed. Powerful man behind mysterious death of businessman Daniel Harper. The public reaction was immediate. Investigations reopened. Police were forced to act. Lawyers scrambled. People who had thought themselves untouchable suddenly found themselves under scrutiny. Elena watched from her home, a quiet satisfaction settling in her chest. Justice wasn't instant. Some of the guilty would try to hide. Some would manipulate the system. But the world now knew the truth. And for Elena, that was enough. She hadn't smiled at Daniel's funeral, because she was happy. She had smiled because she had survived. And now, she had turned survival into justice. Weeks later, Elena finally sat in the living room, alone but calm. The danger was not completely gone, but she had learned how to navigate it. She had discovered something vital. Courage and patience, combined with careful planning, could overcome even the most dangerous secrets. Her phone buzzed. Another message from an unknown number. She didn't read it. She didn't need to. She had taken control. She had faced the fear that once paralyzed her and turned it into action. Elena understood the lesson life had forced upon her. Silence can protect you for a while, but truth and courage can protect you forever. Fear may control you temporarily, but decisive action changes everything. She smiled faintly, a different kind of smile this time. Not fear, not caution, but strength. Silence may shield you, but it can never solve the problem. Courage, patience, and careful planning are the keys to facing danger. Truth, once revealed, has the power to topple even the most powerful. Sometimes surviving isn't enough. You must act to ensure justice. Elena Harper's story became a reminder. The world may try to bury the truth, but one determined person can make it rise again. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it.